Shalom, good morning everyone. Good morning Rechavia Nachlaot in Yerushalayim. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning this Sunday morning, and we're going to start the next part of Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41. If you, this is our daily class from 9:30 to 10 Jerusalem time, and we're happy to see you over here. We look forward to seeing you hopefully Bezrat Hashem in the future classes as well. I should mention first that we're going to start a new course in Tanya in English this Tuesday night. We always have a Chassidus class on Tuesday evenings, 7:30 to 8:30, but now we're starting a new course. The course is titled Seriously Happy, on how to be besimcha, how to be happy, why it's so important according to the teachings of Chassidus. So soon the advertisement will come out. Please spread the word. That's going to be this Tuesday night at 7:30, and hopefully every Tuesday night, as often as possible. Bezrat Hashem. It's going to be right here on Facebook and also on Zoom. This class, the morning class, is only on Facebook for now. So we are in the Tanya. I'm looking just for the page number. Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41. If you have your own Tanya, in the regular Tanya, you can open up to page 112, and the corresponding page is Nun Zayin. Right in the middle, you'll see at the end of the previous line there are two dots, as if to say that's the end of the subject, sort of, at least mainly. And now we'll start the new line, Vehine, and behold. And so up until now, the Alter Rebbe discussed basically the concept of avodah, serving Hashem as far as an eved, as far as a servant, and he called it avodah shlema, that this is a sincere, complete avodah, more connected to the subject of yirah, of fear of Hashem, and a little more, a different concept than ahava, than love. It's more subservient to the master. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to focus a little more on the subject of yirah, of fear. And he discussed already in Perek Daled in chapter 4, a while ago, the Alter Rebbe discussed the fact that there are different types of yirah. And for now we're going to touch upon just two of those types. And there are obviously several different types of fear of Hashem. But now we'll try to focus just on two of them. The most common type of yirah is yirat onesh, a fear of the belt, a fear of the punishment. In other words, why would someone fear someone else? Why should the person, whatever they say, why should I listen to them? Why should I accept upon myself their subservience? So, for most people, they'll say, oh, you know what, because if I don't do it, he'll do A, B, or C. And in the case of Hashem, Hashem is obviously the infinite. So it's sort of logical that a person should be afraid of what Hashem could do. I heard yesterday an interesting interpretation. It's a little bit off topic, but it's a cute interpretation. It says in our sages, Tov sheberofim legehenim. The best doctors are destined to go to hell. So what does that mean? There are different interpretations of what that means. But apparently, about 100 years ago, there was a very, very good doctor that was one of the first doctors that was hired for Shari Tzedek, and he was a nephew of Rav Kook. And so when he came to Rav Kook for a bracha, he asked him if he should take on the job. He told him, Tov sheberofim legehenim. One of the best doctors should go to hell. So it's not the literal translation, but that's basically what it means. So what did he mean? Like how do you say that to someone who's obviously a top doctor, but he's going to have a new job now? So he explained, Rav Kook explained, that when a person needs a lawyer, for example, for a little traffic ticket or something, so he takes a simple lawyer and he gets the job done. But if he needs something really, really big taken care of, then he goes to a top lawyer. He's willing to pay a lot of money. The same thing is Chalila with health. Something's a little issue. He goes to a little doctor. But if he's worried about the big issue, he goes to the top doctor. And so if a person looks at the world as being hell, then he goes to the top doctor. That person needs to have the best doctor to be able to save them. In any case, the subject of Kadosh Baruch Hu being, getting back to our subject, the subject of Hashem being able, that we take upon ourselves fear of Hashem because of the fact that we are so scared of Hashem, that's a very, very basic level. But then there's another level of yirah, of fear, and that's a whole other story. This is a fear, it's yirah ilah. It's yirah of kavod, yirat kavod. To have fear of a person because of their awesomeness. In other words, it's being afraid of someone because of the punishment that they can give is a very low level of fear. But when you're talking about a higher level of admiration and fear and being in awe of a person's presence or an individual's presence, that's a much higher level of yirah. And this can be summarized by two words in Aramaic. Yira ila'a, then that's the higher level of yira, and another two words, yira tata, the lower level of yira. And it's okay to have the lower level of yira, but it's a very good idea to aspire to have fear of Hashem, yira ila'a, the higher level of yira, because then that's a totally different level of relationship with Hashem. So now let's open the Tanya, once again, page Nun Zayin, in the middle of the page. V'hinei, and behold, af mi shegam b'mocho u'v'machshavto, even someone who also in his mind and in his thought, eino margish shum yir'a u'busha, does not feel any type of fear or embarrassment, shame. In other words, sometimes a person will feel embarrassed to stand in front of an important person just because of the shame of how a person looks. Because of how low his soul feels. Mimakor chotzva, from the source of where it's taken. Mimadregot tachtonot diyud sfirot ha'asiyah, from the lowest levels of the 10 levels of asiyah. We'll explain in a moment. In other words, even though if a person doesn't feel this yira, doesn't feel this fear or shame, afal pikein, nevertheless, me'achar shemitkaven ba'avodato, kedei la'avodat hamelech, since a person is sincere in his avodah, he's being honest and straightforward with Hashem. Hashem, I don't really feel a fear of Hashem, but I'm sincere. I do your avodah. I'm committed. Harei zu avodah gemura. That is a complete avodah. Or in the context that the Alter Rebbe said in the end of the previous page, avodah shlema. A complete avodah. Why? Let's leave the why for just a minute. What the Alter Rebbe is saying in a moment, in a nutshell, is that even if a person doesn't feel this yira per se, nevertheless, it's considered a complete avodah. It's okay. As long as a person is sincere with their avodah, then hopefully the yira will come. So firstly, the fact that a person feels like an eved and is doing a sincere avodah, that itself is a good enough reason. That itself is a good enough reason to be considered some kind of yira. Yira, fear, is along those lines of more serious, as opposed to loving, which is more of a close bond. Accepting upon ourselves Hashem's sovereignty. That's pretty good. So Alter Rebbe says, as long as you do it practically, the feeling, if you don't feel the extreme yira, it's okay. You're still considered to be doing a complete avodah. I would like to address the subject of that a person feels that they're not on that level. Mipnei pchitut erech nafsho. What does that mean? that a person might not feel the yira because of the low level of his soul. You see, there are different reasons why a person can feel certain levels, and how a person can feel sometimes low in their own mind in certain scenarios. Every neshama is a chelek eloka mimal mamash, literally a part of Hashem. Nevertheless, there are some neshamot, there are some souls that are more obviously holy and pure and kadosh, and there are some souls that are on a lower level. For example, Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, his soul comes from the level of Chachma v'Atzilut. You might be aware that there are four main spiritual worlds. There's the world of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. The highest world, the world of Atzilut, is all spiritual, so to speak. And so there are 10 Sfirot, and the highest level is Chachma. Moshe Rabbeinu, his neshama, even the way it came down here, is from the highest level. Another example, Eliyahu Hanavi, his neshama was from the level of Malchut of Atzilut, the lowest level of Atzilut. Nonetheless, Atzilut. In other words, there are many neshama that can come from Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. There are countless levels in all these worlds. You can take the simple example of a train or a bus, that you have a local train and you have an express. The local it takes much longer because it makes a number of stops on the way. The express goes straight from the beginning till the end, or sometimes only a few stops instead of many stops. So you get there much quicker. So think of that as being an analogy for the way the neshama comes down. Every single neshama comes from all the way the highest source of Hashem, as literally a part of Hashem. But some of us make a number of local stops along the way. Some of us are an express train going straight from the highest level, the essence of Hashem, straight down into this world. It's obviously very, very difficult. Now, how do we choose? So Moshe Rabbeinu was in a good example. His neshama, the way he was down here, was holy. His neshama shone. You could tell on his face the radiance. And that is something which is unique. That's unusual. Very rare. Now, how does a person receive a neshama like this or a neshama like that? There are different ways that a person can receive a high neshama. One way is depending on the parents. When the parents have a special neshama, then the child can also receive a special neshama. It doesn't have to be that way, but it's very possible. Another way, the Alter Rebbe quotes from the Zohar in the 2nd chapter of Tanya, that when the parents sanctify themselves, prepare themselves with a lot of kedusha before their union, before the child is conceived, then the child can have a very, very special neshama. In fact, it's possible for two parents which have a very regular or simple neshama. Good people, just a simple neshama. And if they sanctify themselves properly, they prepare themselves properly, they can bring down such a great neshama for their child. Besides for that, a leader, for example, Moshe Rabbeinu, every leader of every generation following Moshe Rabbeinu has the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what's called memale makom. Memale makom means you fill the place of the previous leader. So if you have a leader of any sort, obviously in the Jewish world, and then the person passes away, another person takes over their part, they're memale makom. The Rebbe talked about this when one Rebbe, after the passing of a previous Rebbe, then the new Rebbe takes on himself the leadership. So memale makom means that he has all of the strength and the leadership characteristics of the previous Rebbe plus more, because in order to do in order you have to add. It can't just be the same as it was previously. And so this is the concept that the neshama of Moshe gets enclosed into the neshama of the next leader. That's why the Zohar says that every generation has a Moshe. It pashtuta de Moshe b'chol dara v'dara. The expansion, the extension of Moshe in every generation. That's the leader of every generation. And those are only a couple of ways. And in the Kabbalah it discusses many more ways about how a person can receive a special neshama. Now I'm going to move on to the next subject. Even if a person, the next point, same subject, next point. Even if a person has a special neshama, it's possible, God forbid, that there should be something covering over the neshama. It's called timtum halev v'hamoach. It's almost like putting in a plug and not allowing the flow to come through. How can that happen? One of the ways are through eating non-kosher, God forbid. When a person eats non-kosher, it's not just the avera, it's not just the sin, it's not just the actual food that a person eats, but the spirituality of contamination, that a person contaminates their neshama, that can, God forbid, happen. For example, there is something called chalav akum. There are different opinions. Usually we have chalav Yisroel. We have milk, dairy, which has been milked by a Jewish person. And in Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem, we don't really have that issue, but in Chutz La'aretz, it's a big issue. You have to have chalav Yisrael. And several decades ago, a lot of people, and there are some halachic authorities which agree that which say that it's okay to have chalav akum. But the Rebbe wrote in several letters that a person should be extra careful to have chalav Yisrael, milk that has been milked by a Jewish person, because the fact itself that it was milked by a Jewish person, that itself can give a person can lighten up, can shine the channel of the neshama. So it's possible to have a great neshama, but God forbid, it can be covered over with a foreskin, so to speak. Like we read yesterday in the parsha about an arla, a foreskin, and that can block, chalila, God forbid, that can block a person's, the radiance of the neshama. To have a special feeling, and to have a special understanding, and to have a special, what's the word that I'm looking for? To have an open channel. Now, for example, it's possible. Let's take a couple of examples of other scenarios. There are some people that have a chush, have a regishut, have a feeling for things which are visual. Some people get inspired by good music, and they can get all emotional. Some people, everyone is on every person. Hashem created each person with different levels. Now a person can say that, I'm not so inspired by the yirah. Even take an extreme example. I hear once in a while a person tells me, I go to the kotel, with all due respect, it's the holiest place in the world, but I don't necessarily feel anything. I go there because I know it's important and I daven to Hashem. So not always, when it comes to feeling, obviously, just like by anything else in the world, no two people are alike. And some people, mipnei pchitut nafsho, because of the low level of their soul, or the low level of their antenna, their spiritual antenna, it might be difficult for a person to get inspired. So the Alter Rebbe says, don't worry. If you're not inspired, you still have to keep the Torah. You have to do the avoda, like a kabbalato, accepting upon yourself the yoke of Hashem. If you do so, then you're on the right track. Bezrat Hashem, the yirah will come, whether the lower level of yirah, hopefully also the higher level of fear. But you're doing, this is an underlining line that the Alter Rebbe is talking about in this parak, like we talked at great length about 12 days ago. That this is the concept of Eved Avodah. A servant of Hashem needs to be sincere. And the yirah will come along, naturally, Bezrat Hashem. Now we're going to continue. The Alter Rebbe said about Madregot, Tachtonot, the Yud Sfirot Asiyah. So I just want to explain that. I alluded to it earlier, but just to explain that Asiyah is the fourth of the four worlds. Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and then Asiyah. Atzilut is next to Hashem. Bria is creation. Yetzira is formation, and Asiyah is action. We have the spiritual Asiyah, and we have the physical Asiyah. We are now in the Asiyah Gashmit, the materialistic Asiyah. But in the spiritual level, there's also a spiritual level of Asiyah. And so each world has the 10 Sfirot, the 10 levels of Chachma, Bina, Dat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzachot, Yesod, Malchut, the 7 levels of emotion. Kindness, severity, beauty, and determination, inner beauty, foundation, and kingship. And so the lowest level of Asiyah, those neshamot that come from the lowest levels of the 10 Sfirot of Asiyah, and there are many, many more levels that it can be broken down. So those that have neshamos in the lowest level, maybe that's why I don't have such a feeling of yirah of Hashem. L'pnei pchitut erech nafsho. So the Alter Rebbe says, don't worry. Afal pikein, nevertheless. I'm repeating just a few words that we said earlier, just to reinforce it. Me'achar shemitkaven ba'avodato. Since a person has kavana, has intention in order to serve Hashem, the king, Harei zu avodah gemura. This is considered a complete and sincere avodah. So we've established today that because a person is doing something sincerely, that enough is a reason for that to be considered something really special. And I want to finish off this lesson with tying this in with an underlining concept that the Rebbe spoke about very often. And that is, the main thing is the action. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, Lo ha-medrash ikar ela ha-maaseh. The speech, the schmoozing is not the most important part. The main thing is the deed. And that's the point that the Alter Rebbe is trying to explain over here. And the Rebbe said very often that it's really important to understand how important it is to do the mitzvot. In a few weeks, we're coming close to Shavuot. And Shavuot, we got the Torah. And when we got the Torah, the mitzvot, before we got the Torah, we also had mitzvot. Shabbat, other mitzvot we had. We didn't only get the mitzvot only after the Torah was given. Even before the Torah was given. So what's the difference between the mitzvah of Shabbat after to the Shabbat beforehand? The explanation is because through doing a mitzvah, we accomplish tremendous things. We bring Hashem into this world. Before we got the Torah, we did mitzvahs, but this world didn't change. When you said a bracha on an apple, the apple did not become holy necessarily. It was, you did a bracha, and the bracha flew up to the higher worlds, and it did tremendous things. But it didn't change this world. After the giving of the Torah, we got this special power to be able to change this world and to elevate this world. Wow. If that's the case, then we have to admire much more what every mitzvah is. Am Yisrael said Naaseh and then Nishma. We will do, and then they said we will learn. The main thing is the deed. Learning is also important. Understanding is amazing. But even if we don't understand it, we have to do the deed. I remember about 25 years ago when I was in yeshiva, I had an elderly mentor, a bacher as well, but he was a mentor. He told me once a story that he was in yeshiva in Miami. He was a shaliach in the yeshiva, and there was a person that would come in every day to put on tefillin with the boys. And then one day he says, I'm going to Israel, going to yeshiva. So he went to yeshiva for half a year. It was a non-Chabad yeshiva here in Jerusalem. And he came back, after half a year, and my friend says to him, "No, I'm sure you put on tefillin every day." He said, maybe twice. Maybe twice throughout the half a year. It's wonderful to learn Torah. It's wonderful to understand the mitzvot. But there seems to be a lack of understanding and appreciation for what it means, ma'aseh b'po'al, the practical deed. When we do the mitzvahs, even if we don't see how our arm has become more holy after we wrap the tefillin and we finish davening, to how we did it beforehand, to how our arm was beforehand, it doesn't matter. Even if we can't understand it, it doesn't change the fact. Our arm is still is more special in a way it was before. The candlesticks that you light Shabbat candles, the table that you light the Shabbat candles on, has become elevated once you made a bracha on the Shabbat candles. And so the world has changed. And the Rebbe quoted the Rambam very often, which the Rambam says that before we do a mitzvah, we have to think to our minds that the whole world is even. Merits versus sins. Mitzvahs versus sins. And this one mitzvah is going to tip the scale. Also, we have to view ourselves as being even in our deeds. Good versus bad. And one mitzvah is going to tip the scale. So the main thing is the mitzvah. The main thing is the practical deed. When we do the practical mitzvah, then that's the foundation of Am Yisrael. Naaseh and then Nishma. But first is Naaseh. First we have to have the Kabbalat Ol. Even if we don't understand it, we're still committed to fulfill every mitzvah the way it's meant to be. And therefore, it's a great note to finish off this lesson that it's the beginning of the day, beginning of the week, and we should take upon ourselves really to serve Hashem on a much, much stronger way than we've done before, more committed, and the feelings will come afterwards. But the deed is the most important, the ma'aseh b'po'al. Just to finish off with a cute story, that one of the leading shluchim over here in Yerushalayim, Rabbi Naftali Roth, he once brought a friend to the Rebbe, and they came to the Farbrengen, and the Rebbe would speak in Yiddish. And he sees that his friend is going like this, as if he understands. The Rebbe would speak for 3, 4, or 5 hours. So after the Farbrengen, Rabbi Roth turns to his friend and says to him, "It's nice that you were listening, but what did you understand? I thought you didn't understand Yiddish." So he said, "I'll tell you, Rabbi, I understood just 3 words that the Rebbe kept saying again and again and again. The Ha'ma'aseh hu ha'ikar. Ha'ma'aseh hu ha'ikar." Those are words in Hebrew. Some Yiddish is woven with Hebrew. But he understood that that's the Rebbe's main theme. That the main thing is the deed. We have to do the mitzvahs. And the more mitzvahs we do, we elevate the world. And so, Bezrat Hashem, we should meet here every morning, 9:30 for as long as possible. And for learning, we'll continue Bezrat Hashem, the Tanya, tomorrow morning. And Tuesday evening, we're going back to our regular Tuesday night class, Bezrat Hashem, 7:30 to 8:30. A great course that we're starting this Tuesday evening called Seriously Happy. I look forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you so much. All the best.